Howdy, everybody. Dave Walker here with the Beta SMB Institute, and I am very excited to have Peter Curzon from Yelp joining us today. Welcome, Peter.
Thanks, Dave. Happy to be here.
Happy to have you here. You guys do so many different things out there that feed information to us in the those who sell to small business space. But one of the ones that I find most fascinating every year is your trust and safety report. And that's really the principal reason why I wanted to have you talk to our audience to really talk about the most recent trust and safety report findings coming out of 2020, all the things that are going on with it. But before we jump into that, why don't you just give everyone a little bit of background on you, where Yelp is these days, and just any other 411 kind of things that you think would be helpful to the audience?
Yeah, you bet. So Peter Curzon, I joined Yelp back in 2011. Before that, I was a tech investment banker before I came to my senses. And so back in 2011, 10 years ago, Yelp had 600 employees, 17 million reviews, $80 million of annual revenue. And we're still private. So shortly thereafter went public, and fast forward to today, we've got 224 million reviews, 4,000 employees,
Mm.
annual guidance of about $1 billion of revenue. And so grown a lot in that time frame. And in our core, we're a marketplace that connects consumers with great local businesses and helps local businesses attract customers.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So, talk to us about the origins of the trust and safety report.
Sure. So Yelp has always placed a tremendous amount of value and effort on trust and safety. And frankly, way before the term trust and safety became a household name or industry term or popular team at a tech company. So our co-founder and CEO, Jeremy Stoppelman, had the vision from the early days back from when Yelp was founded back in 2004 to place a lot of emphasis on trust and promoting reliable content, and then weeding out sort of misinformation and lower trust content. And so created over the years a recommendation algorithm where we try to programmatically identify through hundreds of signals content that is more trustworthy, and specifically call out or kind of demote on the page content where it's clear to us that there are elements of bias or misinformation. Think conflicts of interest. Business owners shouldn't be able to grade their own homework. Probably is not a good thing out there for either helping consumers or the honest business owners out there. And so it's been a really big focus for us. For example, so in 2020, consumers contributed about 18 million reviews to our platform.
Wow.
We published 13 million of those as recommended reviews, and then about 4.5 million of them are not recommended. They're still published. They're just kind of on a second page lower down. Consumers can still find them. And then about 750,000 reviews we took down for violating our content guidelines.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just really haven't seen out there any other company. The content moderation has been pretty buzzworthy, but I haven't seen another company that goes to these great lengths, and certainly that hasn't since 2006 and 2007, investing in these things. And so we've launched other safety programs, things like our consumer alerts, or health scores or COVID safety information, and continue to expand our content moderation practices, whether it's programmatically or through a team of hundreds of trained moderators. So anyway, we've had all these initiatives, and we've communicated about them sort of ad hoc over time and in different silos. And we thought that it'd be a really great opportunity to consolidate all of these different efforts into a helpful site that hopefully communicates our efforts here. So we launched trust.yelp.com, and also published our 2020 annual trust report.
So, do you feel like, particularly in 2020, vindication is too strong a word, but did you kind of reflect as an organization, wow, we really were always on the right track and having this really what is so necessary now. This battle that we have against misinformation and disinformation and fraud and so many different things. Did that feel really good to you guys actually in 2020 when that became so important for all of us?
Well, I mean, I don't want to take too much credit or anything like that because we've stumbled along the way, and we've had our learnings and the like. But in hindsight, yeah, it was very prescient from Jeremy and the rest of our team to invest significant resources from early on to
Mhm.
combat misinformation. And so when we saw other platforms out there really struggling with it and very clear that they hadn't invested the resources, boy,
Mhm. Mhm.
just felt really thankful that we had, and was a
Right.
moment of pride as an employee and stakeholder that we've been trying to do the right thing.
Mhm.
It's hard to do, but we've tried pretty hard to do so, and I think that it's going to continue to serve our community of consumers and business owners, hopefully for many years to come.
So you guys were one of the most reliable sources of information and insight to what actually was going on with small business. There were so many other kind of sources of things like business closure, changes in hours, permanent closures, temporary closures, new hours, all the rest. Um, it- could you kind of just walk us through some of the key findings that came out of 2020, and as updated as they can possibly be? What is current state right now?
Yeah, you bet. So I'm going to jump around a bit here from a couple different data sources. We mentioned the trust and safety report. We also have our Yelp economic average reports, where we pull data from our data set about local communities and the local markets, and I can identify trends and patterns. So let's tackle closings, reopenings, and new business formations first. So if we rewind about a year ago, it's crazy to think it's only been a year. It feels like so much has elapsed in 12 months. But if we go back to kind of last summer and into the fall, by September, we'd seen about 100,000 businesses close permanently and 65,000 temporary close. And many of the categories, were impacted, but we certainly saw restaurants and shopping sort of the hardest hit. And as time went on, we've all seen new cases of COVID rise and fall, and during each of these declining periods, we'd see reopenings tick up. And so, total number of reopenings as of March 31st, rewinding back to March 1st of last year, it was about 260,000
Wow.
reopenings, and tens of thousands of those businesses reopened multiple times, which is just
Wow.
a lot to go through as a business owner. Because not only trying to keep yourself safe and
Mhm.
family and employees, but to open and shut and deal with the regulations is just really tough in cases and the like. But there's light at the end of the tunnel. I think we're all kind of seeing. Q1 saw 150,000 new businesses form, which was only down 2% from last year and was actually up 4% from the first quarter of 2019. So it's great to see the entrepreneurial spirit kind of alive
Mhm.
and growing. And so let's see, over the past year, if we look at a bigger time frame, there have been 500,000 businesses that have opened. That's down 11% year over year. But one of the kind of brighter spots has been service categories. And so, not surprising with all this time we've spent in our homes,
Mhm.
we've seen 273,000 services businesses, so plumbers, electricians, auto repair type categories, which is up 2% year over year. So we are seeing some of these bright spots. One of the other areas that you mentioned was hours. So let's tackle that for a second. So always a huge focus for us at Yelp, whether it's business hours or call it location or listing data generally, is really important. So we've all had the pain of experience inaccurate hours, whether that's, showing up and a business isn't open, or for business owner perspective, potential lost business could have served the customer. Last year, Yelp updated the pages for 1.5 million businesses, and also added an attribute where we display when the page was last updated to hopefully instill more confidence for a consumer that, hey, these hours are right, they are current. Which, I mean, number of times we've all seen regulations like by each metro and case counts and the like change. It has been a moving target for many of us, so it has been kind of a helpful measure for us, which along the lines of some of the safety measures that we've put out. And so we've launched a feature that's been used by 750,000 businesses to promote the safety measures that they've taken, whether it's masks are required, or having outdoor seating, or social distancing is enforced, or hand sanitizer is available. Just a lot that we can do. And that's all been on kind of like the business and like listing data sort of side of things. One of the other areas where we get interesting information is from our search volumes. And so one of the things that we've seen, let's take home services, for example, we've seen like 90 or 100% growth year over year in categories like real estate agents, junk removal services, architects, electricians, and handymen.
Mm-hmm.
Which has all been really interesting. And then one other area that we've all cared a great deal about has been and seen in our search data is people rising up to reject racism and sexism.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've seen the consumer desire to support Black, Latinx, Asian, and women-owned businesses has really jumped tremendously. And so I'm going to hit a couple stats here. Women-owned businesses in the US, we saw search volumes increase by 264% year over year. Black-owned businesses, over 3,000% increase in search volume. Latinx-owned businesses, 4,000% growth. And Asian-owned businesses, over 3,400% growth in February. So lots and lots happening on a variety of different fronts, but it's been really interesting to follow and be a part of.
Fascinating to hear those numbers, and I think shockingly, but maybe not shockingly large. I mean, there certainly was from so many different angles an awareness of the underserved small businesses in all of our communities, whether they be African American owned or women owned, and to see that actually consumers were changing their mind, changing their habits of where they were looking to shop. That's really fascinating. So as you kind of cast your eye now across this landscape of small businesses, and I don't know if in your data this in some ways was revealed to you, but much is being written right now about the digital transformation of small business. And it's actually a very hot topic at this conference. And I am one of those people who I'm a little suspicious of transformation. I'm not suspicious about adoption. I think there's been a tremendous amount of digital app adoption and migration of services to the cloud, data to the cloud, et cetera, et cetera. But from where you sit, was there evidence in the small business community that they realized that Yelp and its digital platform was an incredibly important assistant in their running the business? Not that they may have not recognized that before, but did you see an uptake in their adoption of Yelp?
We did, certainly. And so it definitely varied by category, geography, like which phase we were in through this past year. But on the whole, we definitely saw some large growth. One area of growth was not surprisingly food ordering. And so we have an integrated online ordering experience through partnership with Grubhub. And we saw tremendous both consumer growth as folks were all, ordering from home and tired of cooking, as well as merchant adoption of online ordering solution really grew significantly. And then on some of our Yelp Direct advertiser products, we saw strong adoption of Yelp Connect, which is a marketing offering that allows merchants to communicate updates and posts to their customers and market them within the Yelp profile page.
Mhm.
Lots of adoption there, as well as with our waitlist product, which has been really useful for restaurants to manage either their tables or their waits.
Two things that you provide consumers are click to call and click to website from a Yelp page. Did you see an increase in volume there where first and foremost there was consumer demand, but more importantly, there actually was a destination on the other side that small businesses were increasingly having websites and increasingly using click to call?
Sure. So click to call, we definitely saw significant growth in call volumes. And so, we couldn't just walk into a store in many
Right.
cases. And so we did see a big spike in phone calls. Click to websites, I couldn't tell you on that data. I haven't looked at that in particular. But it has been over the past several years a growing trend of more businesses having more websites of higher quality. We certainly have much less of the pinch and zoom or like not having mobile optimized pages, which was super painful, I'm sure, for all of us. And so, those trends or improvements have certainly accelerated, and we'd expect to do so or continue to do so.
I'm stepping back for a minute, and I don't mean to make this too intellectual a question, but what do you think the state of trust is between consumers and small business right now?
That's a good question. So I think it's pretty healthy. I don't have a reason to say otherwise. I think there's a tremendous amount of empathy from consumers right now, and pride and desire to support our local communities. We hear lots of stories of that, both anecdotally and within sort of some of our traffic patterns,
Hmm.
of just eagerness to help our local communities, which is interesting. As we think about sort of rise of larger tech platforms that do serve sort of nationwide audiences. Uh, but I think, yeah.
And 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 again, maybe a subset question of that is so many consumers migrated their shopping behavior from the local businesses that they had used to patronize to Amazon or to other kind of large player digital destinations, which isn't necessarily a lack of trust in the classic sense of the small business are going to do me wrong, but more I don't trust the small business to be able to fulfill these new needs and new demands that I have because they're closed or because they're not e-commerce friendly or because they don't do delivery and all the rest. Do you think there's a rebuilding of trust that no, small businesses are quite capable of doing a lot of the things and have adapted to be capable to do a lot of the things that you really should be able to rely on them to do?
Yeah, and I'd put some of those trends and observations less in the bucket of trust and more in the bucket of convenience.
Right.
It's so easy to fire up your Amazon app, tap, tap, order, God knows what, and have it show up that day or in 2 days.
Right.
I don't think that necessarily replaces a desire to engage in our communities as we are out and about. When folks return to the office and you're walking home, and I walk next to a papyrus gift card shop, I'd much rather pop in there, look at cards, and uh, bring home the right card for my family than go order it on Amazon and have it arrive later. So I think some of it is the choking of supply with our lives disrupted, or at least for
Mhm.
many of us still. And when we return outside of our cocoons, I think that there is going to be a big rush, frankly, to engage with people
Mhm.
in physical locations.
When you think about the value of of Yelp and of what it does for society as a whole, what it does for businesses, what it does for consumers, and we really talk about the effort that you guys put into making sure that misinformation and disinformation and fake news and all the other labels that we kind of throw at that doesn't really occur. Um, what are the challenges related to that that you really think you're going to have to encounter as you go forward? Does it, frankly, does it get worse? Does it become harder and there's more of it out there? Or do you think that you're kind of building a space that's somewhat walled off from the rest of the misinformation that we have to all deal with?
So it's I wouldn't say it's walled off. The spirit of Yelp is to be a reflection of the real world as
Hmm.
accurately as we can. At the end of the day, Yelp is a platform. Sometimes people say, "Oh, Yelp says
Right.
this and Yelp says that." Hey, we actually don't say anything. We're providing a
Right.
platform for a community
Right.
of consumers to actually write and share their experiences with local businesses, which, by the way, are trends that have happened since forever. Like we've always asked someone, "Hey, Dave, can you recommend a place to get my haircut?" Or have you been to any fun restaurants lately? Or I need a mechanic that I can trust.
Mhm.
And so Yelp has brought that online, and so is going to continue to ensure that we are helping real feedback from hopefully real people, and without those bias conflicts of interest, people paying to try to get a good reputation. We certainly believe that great reputations are earned, not bought.
Mhm. And I there's a misconception that I think has existed for years that Yelp is a destination for negative reviews, for negative views. What's the percentage of 5-star reviews that exist on Yelp right now?
So I'm going to hazard a guess here, but I'd say it's in the ballpark of something like 30 or 40%. But what's interesting is actually the negative reviews, which we define as being 1 or 2 stars,
Hmm.
only make up, I think, about 20% of reviews contributed to Yelp. So we're looking at about 80% of the review content that's submitted is 3 stars or above. So, and we define 3 stars as being an average A-OK experience,
Right.
which is actually kind of interesting. So there's an FTC economist, Devesh Raval, who last year decided to study online reviews and looked at Yelp as well as other major platforms out there, and
Hmm.
found that the distribution of reviews on Yelp was the most even, or closest to a normal curve, if you will, which I think accurately reflects our real world experiences, right? Like,
Hmm.
well, most of the time businesses like, great, cool, it was really good. Or, like somewhere in the middle of the bell curve. And then every once in a while, there's an outlier that's really excellent, or hopefully not too frequently, a not as good experience. And what this economist found was that many of the other services had significant skewing to the high end of the rating spectrum. And so this is that age old problem of, if every business is 4.6, no one's 4.6. We
Right.
can't all be above average.
Right.
That sort
Right.
of like, isn't how it works. And so it was just really interesting sort of validation, or finding of something we'd really known internally, but we mainly look at our own content and try to serve our users, and we don't
Hmm.
always look out at kind of a larger um, ecosystem. And so understanding these findings to communicate and articulate in a really clean way was exciting, and showed some of these things that we knew to be true, but helped us in that storytelling. And another one along those lines was, within his research, we've always known Yelp reviews are of high quality. They're known for being long. And so this economist found that Yelp reviews on average contained about 600 characters in length. And then whereas Google reviews, and this is not to pick on anyone, but by comparison, Google reviews, 45% of them contained less than 100 characters, and about half of those had no text at all. And so I say that again, not to throw stones or anything, but more that, like, you can take a company with tremendous resources and lots of really smart people, and just goes to show how difficult it is to, on the one hand, collect really high quality content. One of the measures of that could be
Mm-hmm.
review count or character count, as well as managing the fraud. Those 4.5 million out of 18 million reviews, and I shouldn't say just fraud, but like call it lower trust information,
Mm-hmm.
because we bucket a lot of things into that. But the 4.5 million reviews that Yelp did not recommend out of the 18 million, it's really not about a numbers game of just having the most content. Oh, it's got to have 1 million reviews. Well, a review that's, hey, the tacos were 5 stars, great, and that's it, doesn't
Yeah,
really help anybody.
exactly. I couldn't agree more. I can't tell you how much I prefer using those more expansive reviews. If nothing else, they make me laugh because they're always so, people take a great deal of creative license with their reviews. Hey, this has been great. Um, I guess my last question to you is, where do you see Yelp in 5 years? What will the company be? You've been there now for 10. What do you think the next 5 look like?
We're going to continue to double down on trust, because it's at the core of everything we do. Uh, and so I think it's easy to think about Yelp on sort of a nationwide or a macro scale, but the reality is Yelp is an amalgamation of all these tiny little Yelps in a small market or a suburban market or a large urban center. And so I think that while Yelp originally grew in large urban centers, you're going to continue to see us grow and expand in the suburbs, in smaller markets.
Hmm.
And so our content, like as more people come to the platform, we receive more content submitted, which then in turn attracts more consumers. And as we build our consumer audience of high intent users looking to transact with local businesses, it becomes more valuable to local businesses. And then in addition, we're going to see continued horizontal expansion of consumers who discover Yelp because they're hungry. Let's face it, we all get to eat 3 times a day. Restaurants is our most known category, largely for that reason.
Hmm.
But as more consumers learn that they can count on Yelp and trust the efforts that we put in place, we see consumers expand other categories, like the services verticals where we monetize highly. And it makes a lot of sense, right? If you're going to invite somebody into your house with a big wrench, want to make sure it's a trustworthy, reputable person.
Right.
And
Right.
so, we'll keep doubling down on trust, growing our communities, and then helping expand into verticals outside of the high frequency ones.
Great answer. Thanks again so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.